You know how we sometimes throw around this sentiment of, this made my day, you made my day with what you said. The conversation I had this morning truly made my day. It was an early morning one. I connected with Annelise McCarthy, who joined from all the way in Australia, in Sydney. It was an 8 a.m. recording for me. And sometimes when I wake up on those early morning recording days, it feels like, right, get into the energy. And it can feel quite hard for me to do that. The minute I connected on the Zoom call and the minute I connected with Annelise, that was all over. I could just feel the energy. I could feel a connection. Sometimes this is really hard to achieve in a virtual setting, but the conversation I was able to have with Annelise is just beyond the expectation I had on it. And Annelise is somebody I've been following for quite a while. She's a speaking coach, and so naturally I gravitated towards her content. And she's just gone on a massive tour in Australia, and she called it You're on Mute. So I felt like I need Annelise on the podcast. I need her to come and speak to us about how to go off mute, how to make your voice count, how to find your voice in the first place. I loved how genuinely she shares about her journey, how authentically she talks about nerves showing up for her, about her getting nervous before she goes into calls or meetings or stages, really. I know how daunting some of this can be. I know how uncomfortable it can feel to build the muscle of speaking up and going off mute, but it is so incredibly important for us to do that. I just know that this conversation has the potential to change something for you. The way you show up, and the way you speak up, and the way you go off mute in your next meeting. Thank you for being here. If you enjoy this episode, please do not forget to rate and review, give it 5 stars on Spotify. And without further ado, let's get into the conversation. Annelise, thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome to the Awfully Quiet podcast.
Thank you so much. And I love your podcast name so much. I feel like there's a story in that name.
There is a story in that name. And let's just kick off with the first question, because I think it builds the perfect bridge to it. It's all about quiet skills that tend to get underestimated, and how quiet, introspective traits in the workplace tend to be something that get overlooked, underestimated. So one of the questions I always like to ask my guests, and especially you, is, do you think you have a quiet trait or anything that you feel like is a quieter skill in yourself that has helped you in your career and that may get underestimated?
Oh, what a brilliant question to kick off with.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now I wish I did prepare, because that's I was just saying before, I don't like to prepare for podcasts because I like to be put on the spot, but I'm now put on the spot. What a brilliant question. I love that so much. I don't think I've been asked that before. Let me really think about that, because that's a very, very intentional ask. A quiet skill that I have. Do you know what comes to mind immediately, Hannah? I've grown up with a father who is very emotional. He has always been very loud about his feelings. He's never been shy in saying, I love you. He taught me to write poetry at a very young age. He's a very affectionate man. And as I've grown older, I recognize I'm incredibly emotionally attuned. And I have, I believe, a really strong ability to read people that I inherited from my dad. And my dad worked in sales, and I would watch how he would respond to people and interact with people and mirror people as a child. And I think a lot of that I've subconsciously taken on as I've grown up. And I think now in the work that I do, so much of what I'm very proud of as a quiet skill is actually not when I speak, but it's when I listen. And I think I'm very good, or I like to think I'm very good at meeting a room where they're at and being able to match what I see and try and mold myself to what is needed in that moment. I don't know if that's a skill that is trained or learned, but I do credit a lot of that attunement to my dad, because he has a very beautiful ability to always ask the right questions and always be profoundly present at any given time. And so now I think there's a part of me that demonstrates that in the work that I do, even if I don't fully recognize it in the moment. So thank you for the opportunity to reflect on that, because I don't think I've really landed in that before. So that's very special to reflect on.
I mean, it's a fabulous answer. And it's exactly the kind of gold I wish to pull out on this podcast, because you mentioned your dad in sales, right? I think so much of sales we always think is like a loud, extroverted, outgoing skill set, right? But what you touched on was like, oh, it's quiet, it's listening. It's, being attuned to, your counterpart, who you're in the room with. And you're using that now with the people you're with and coaching. And, you've got rooms full of people listening to you, but obviously being attuned to what they need and meeting them where they're at, I believe is a quiet skill. Love that.
Great question. I love that question very much.
Gets us off to the right start. Annelise, I feel like you found your thing. And I always, what I mean by that is like, I obviously follow you on social media. That's how I found you. And I feel like whenever I see somebody who's just so truly themselves in front of a camera, it tells me that something must have clicked along the way. You found your thing. You feel so passionate about what you convey and what you speak about, and it's felt, right? And that is public speaking to you, and it's so meaningful to you that you went on a national tour in Australia to teach thousands of women about going off mute and speaking up more. And where I want to go first is, why do you feel speaking or public speaking is such an important skill? And what would happen if more women would go off mute, especially when it relates to the workplace and corporate environments?
Wonderful, wonderful question. I'm very appreciative of how intentionally you have prepared for this interview. So that's very special to receive.
Annelise, that's the truth.
I'm here for all the stalking. I'm here for it. So thank you. That's very beautiful to receive. To answer your first question, Hannah, why? Transparently, when I was a kid, it's something I wasn't great at until I became good at it. I grew up with a speech impediment, had a lot of social anxiety as a kid, and communication skills or speaking didn't come very naturally to me until, long story short, I was forced into speech pathology and then speech therapy and then public speaking classes, drama classes. 10, 15 years later, I became quite good at it. As a kid, as a young adult, it was simply something I was good at. And so I did it because I was good at it. So my why previously was, well, it's something I know very well and I'm good at, so I'll just keep doing what I'm good at because it gives me a confidence boost and I enjoy doing it. Now that why has transformed quite significantly. And it's because as an adult and as a female, I've noted the gap that communication creates for people in our world. And either you are an effective communicator and a confident communicator, and you are able to rise to the top of the ranks, so to speak, or you're not a confident communicator, or perhaps more of a wallflower. And because of that, you're perceived differently. And perhaps you miss out on opportunities, or you don't raise your hand, or you don't assert yourself. And so your presence and your authority and your autonomy, your ability to take up space is diminished. So my why now is quite simple. Public speaking is the number one fear in the world. It's called glossophobia, and it affects up to 78% of the population, which is astronomical. It's a huge percentage. It's greater than the fear of death. So more people would fear standing on stage than they would dying. My mission is that by the time this delicious body has clocked on into the next life, that statistic will be drastically lower. Because I don't believe that using your voice is something that should induce fear. I think using your voice is something that should be celebrated. And so to answer your second question, why women and how does that influence them or change how they show up? When you take a glass of water and you dip your finger into the top of the glass, and let's say you're standing over a swimming pool or a river and you flick your finger into that body of water, it creates a ripple effect. And this is what I believe using your voice does. To you and me, it's a communication skill, but what you don't recognize is that it influences how you speak to yourself, your self-talk. It influences the relationship with your family, with your children, with your colleagues, with your boss, with people online and how they perceive you, your career prospects, your financial compensation and earning capacity. It influences everything simply through your ability to take ownership of yourself. And so for women, I mean, there are many statistics that prove why women struggle a lot more with communication than why men do. But for me, the mission was really simple. I have noted the dramatic impact it has had in my life and how it has changed my life. And so now I'm here standing on the other side of the bridge going, well, shit, if I could do that, surely millions of others could too. And so now I consider it a divine duty and responsibility and honor at that to share as much as I know and to scream it and advocate for it as often as I can so that it becomes more accessible for women and easier for women to use their voice.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and also some of the behind the scenes of how you got there and reiterating that it's a skill. It's not something you're born with, which we could easily assume when we see somebody like you, honestly, on the internet, because obviously you're so good at what you do. You're so confident. You're on stage in your red sparkly suit. So it's all too easy to say, oh, easy for her because she's born with it. And she's just got that confidence and personality to be out there on stage and do this thing, right? But I'm sure that you have a lot of conversation with women on tour about that misconception about, this is a skill. This has not come naturally to me. There is a lot of work that goes into standing on a stage and doing what I'm doing at this level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also want to lift the veil, not even with communication. This tour I just ran, yes, it was an extraordinary feat and I'm not diminishing that. But Hannah, I was shit terrified running that. And the promoting it, it brought up so much self-doubt. And it at many times put me in an incredibly dark place that you'd think after years of working on yourself and working on your confidence, my brain still has this weird mask where I think, I'm going to get to this pinnacle, this point where I no longer have to do the work, where it's done, where I get to close the book and be like, you know what? That's good for me. I feel good about myself. I've built the self-confidence. I love the woman I am. I'm proud of who I'm becoming. Surely nothing else bad's going to happen. Surely we've got no more self-doubt. Surely no more imposter syndrome. But what I've now learned is that when I am put into positions like I have been the past 12 to 18 months with building that tour, which was a huge project and it was history making. It was the first in Australia of its kind. So very significant. I had so many moments of self-doubt. I had so many moments of thinking, who the hell am I to be doing this? Why me? And will people even attend? Will people I had so much doubt. And I think the thing that I'm very proud of is being confident is not the omission of fear. It is choosing to take action in spite of it. And the reason that I proudly proclaim myself to be a confident woman is not because I feel confident all the time. It's because I choose to do things that help me build it. And this tour was the greatest example of that. It was doing something that quite frankly scared the shit out of me and challenged me and pushed me in every possible way. But I didn't allow it to shrink me or diminish me or make me feel like I couldn't do it. I rose to the challenge. And I think that's what I wish more people knew about confidence is it's like you said, you're not born with it. It is a muscle. And the more you strengthen it, the more it grows.
Yeah. I get a sense that a lot of public speaking is actually inner work and knowing yourself really well. And I mean, honestly, like you've touched on it, it's like, tackling the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, some of the limiting beliefs we have, some of the fears we have, right? So all that stuff. But then also the sentiment of finding your voice. And something that I've often been told early into my career is like, you need to make your voice count, right? You need to speak up so that your voice is being heard. And you talked about that ripple effect. How do you find your voice in the first place? Because I feel like that is part of the inner work and the reflection that we need to do before we even put ourselves into situations where we can then train that muscle of speaking up and actually sharing our voice. I feel like a lot of it starts with How do you find that? How do you speak in a way that feels like you, that feels true to who you are? Because so often I feel like we try to emulate what we think a confident speaker looks like or sounds like, right? I would often try and make myself louder than my voice actually is. And I don't think it's about volume at all. It's about finding your voice, your style of, bringing a point across. How did you go about that?
Oh man, that is a massive question. It's a great question. I also want to point out you are so beautifully articulate, Hannah. I so enjoy listening to how you express your train of thought.
Don't say that. Come on, I'm not a native speaker. I often feel like, oh my gosh, I wish I could. But thank you very much.
No, yeah, please. I'm very grateful that you interrupted yourself there, because I really mean it. Truly, you are very, very articulate and beautiful to listen to. It's a massive question that you've asked, so I'll break it down in a few different ways. But what's interesting is I'll firstly acknowledge two things that came to mind. You made the presumption at the beginning. I'm guessing it's a lot of inner work. This is an ongoing joke that I have with so many people that do work with me, where the first session in, they'll either sigh or they'll sit back in their chair or they'll give an exasperated kind of laugh and they'll go, oh, so this isn't what I thought it would be. And I'm like, yeah, because we're not starting with how to write a speech and how to use body language, babe. That's not where it begins. And what you shared before, you said this idea of you have to make your voice count. That is the byproduct of building confidence in your voice, because the work is believing that your voice counts. Because how can you make your voice count if you don't think that your voice deserves to be heard? And how can you make your voice count if you value other people's opinions higher than your own? And how can you make your voice count if you compare your voice to everybody else's, and at the end of the evaluation, it falls up short? Learning how to find your voice will be a different journey for every single person that chooses to invest in that journey. So I'm not going to be so presumptuous to paint the whole journey with a single brush and say that it will be the same for everybody. But what I can speak to is the journey that I've had and the journey that many of my clients or students have had. And the first thing to acknowledge is it's really hard. And I think that's what's so delightfully frustrating, is that it is not easy. And that's what makes the journey so rewarding. But where a lot of people will quit is because when we want to build confidence in our speaking voice and we want to feel like a confident communicator, we often jump to skills. So what I mean by that is we will start learning about the power of pause, or the 3 top body language tools to use to influence, or why pitch is your next weapon to use in your next sales meeting, or whatever it might be. We jump to the tangible tools that make sense to us. What is uncomfortable to sit with and what is harder to do is the inner work in your voice. And those are the questions I asked before of, well, actually, do you believe that your voice is worthy of being heard? And what is the relationship that you have with your voice? And do you back yourself in the moments that matter? Would you advocate for yourself in a room of people that doubted you? That is the relationship we want to build, because all the other things come as a byproduct of building that relationship. But unfortunately, that work isn't sexy, and that work doesn't sell as deliciously as I can teach you how to influence with 3 simple techniques. And so my work and my job is to try and combine both worlds, and hence why You're on Mute, the tour that I ran across Australia, was born, because I recognized, yes, there is a big desire for tangible tools, and there is a desire for people to learn how to communicate impactfully and engaging and captivating and informative and whatever it might be. But I know, as the coach, as the facilitator, and as the person who has lived and breathed this work for over 15 years, that it would be a disservice to not teach the other side of the coin. So the other side of the coin is, like you mentioned, how do you know what you actually speak like or sound like? And how do you know what your tone of volume is? Or how do you know what you like? My counter question to that would be, okay, well, let's say that you want to take up dancing. How do you know what style of dance you enjoy? By attending every possible class that you can. By learning about hip hop and ballet, that's it, and contemporary and tap, and trying and going, oh, that didn't feel so good. Oh, that one, I like that one. Okay, that was pretty good. I'll do that again. And your voice is the exact same, because your voice is an instrument. And the more you learn to play with your instrument and to explore and experiment with all the different notes and all the different things, you build so much more confidence in your repertoire. And soon your playlist, so to speak, expands. And so I know for myself, I'm a speaker where, I like to swear. I like to think I'm quite funny. Some people might disagree with me, but I think I have a good sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. That Australian wit, I know.
There we go. Yeah. Thank you. I really enjoy the architecture of speaking. So I enjoy taking people on an orchestrated journey, finding emotional highs and energizing highs, and then really bringing people down into a deep, sincere, bold moment. I love that because for me, I'm a performer and I was raised on the stage. And so that is my style and that is my voice. But I only learned that through giving myself permission to play. And so for anybody who is trying to find their voice or learn what that is, the more you use it, the more you will learn. And giving yourself an invitation, permission every day to even pick up the phone and record to your camera. You don't need to post it, but just as a little permission slip to experiment with, okay, so what would it sound like if I changed my pitch and maybe, I don't know, spoke up here for a little while? Does that feel good to me? Yeah. Well, actually, you know what?
But we tend to do that in some situations, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about my voice when I started this podcast. And I, just kind of recorded loads and loads of, solo episodes, interviews. And it is a lot of practice that goes into when does my voice actually feel like myself and like it feels like I'm at home, right? And I think if we can find that feeling on a stage, in a meeting, with people that are strangers or where we're, naturally more uncomfortable, I think that's the goal, is like to find something inside yourself that feels safe or that feels like home or that feels true to you. And I love that you said, it's not something you find and then you go on stage. It's not something you find and then you go speak up in the meeting. It's something that you find while you do. It's an important difference.
Absolutely. And I love so much that you've used the word home because one of the ways that I like to describe this journey is it is a homecoming. And it is a coming home to self in so many ways because it is accepting that you will remove the masks that you have been taught to use in order to be accepted or liked or good enough or smart enough, whatever the labels might be. Radically owning your voice is one of the most powerful and threatening things that you could do, especially as a woman, because you are proclaiming that you will not succumb to the box that everybody else has told you that you should sit in. And so what you have done, Hannah, with your podcast, where you will sit there with your microphone and you will film those solo episodes, you are demonstrating so perfectly how you embody that journey of homecoming. Because I imagine, I'll take a wild guess, you correct me if I'm wrong, but after you do an episode, you might listen back to it.
Yeah.
And what do you learn?
Painfully so.
Yeah. Okay. So easy, what do you learn through listening back to those voice recordings?
Yeah. It's, I can instantly tell when I don't feel at home or when I'm speaking about something that doesn't feel quite right. And what I've actually done is I've tried so many different ways of recording solo episodes. I would try heavily scripted or reading from a teleprompter or unscripted entirely, just kind of thinking out loud, voice note style. So just kind of me and my thoughts, right? So many different types. And I try to find that sweet spot of oh, this is me. This is the type of, speaking that feels genuine to me and that also lands with the people I'm speaking with, right? So it's an iterative process and it took me a while to figure out. I beat myself up. I had a lot of self-doubt of oh, I'm just not good at it. I've put in the hours, but I'm just not good at it. But I think at one point it just clicks for you and you find, well, this is what it's for me. And it's different for everyone. I think that's what makes it hard because you can't just go out and take anybody's advice on, here's how you should do it. Here's how you should record a solo episode. You've got to find your own way.
That's it. And it's ongoing. I think that's a beautiful piece you've mentioned there. It is an ongoing relationship. I think, as a woman, the relationship to my voice is very akin to the relationship with my body. As a woman myself, it was a rite of passage to learn how to love my body. I grew up with a very disordered relationship with food. I didn't like how I looked. Like that was a really, really hard time in my upbringing. And so there were days where I absolutely hated how I looked. And then as I grew up and I started therapy or learning practices of self-love or compassion or whatever it might be, I started to learn how to love my body. And what's interesting is even though I have all the tools now of how to love my body, there are still days where I'll put on a pair of jeans and go, ugh, it just doesn't feel good.
I know, right?
And it's the same with my voice. And I imagine like right now, for example, I don't have children. If one day I choose to have children, my voice will change because how I speak to those kids will change the way that I use my voice. So it is, my point being, an ongoing relationship. As you mentioned, it is constantly ebbing and flowing. And I think giving yourself grace to explore and to play and to know that there's no finality in the journey. It is ongoing, just like the relationship with yourself. The voice is an extension of that. You have, the relationship you build with you, your self-confidence, with your body, with your voice, with your heart and soul. Like they're all just different embodiments of you, and your voice being a very key part of that.
You touched on something that I really liked, and you said that not speaking up is actually a disservice to those around you. And what lights me up and why I feel so excited about this conversation and the work here is there are so many people in the workspace who are quieter, more introspective, and they're often being told, oh, you're awfully quiet. That's where it's come from. You're awfully quiet. Why are you not saying anything? And the tragedy is that there's so much brilliance inside of them. They've got the thoughts, they've got the perspective, they have a voice, they've got an opinion, but they're often held back by fear to speak up, to say the thing that is not 100% polished yet. They've got a brilliant thought, but instead of sharing it, they just keep to themselves and, not say anything for fear of it not coming out in the way they feel about it. And I often feel like there's a difference between a thought that we keep on the inside and then actually articulating it in a way that it lands with an audience, that it lands in a meeting, right? How do you build that bridge? How do you say something out loud, and how do you articulate something that you feel is right on the inside in a way that lands with an audience? How much prep? I'd imagine there's a lot of prep that goes into that.
It's another brilliant question. So what we're trying to build here is a skill set, which is building your thought-to-speech fluency. So you could have a lot of people, as you've mentioned, are brilliant at what they do. They don't lack competency. They don't lack experience. But there is a gap between what they know and what they verbally communicate. And I think one really big thing to address here before I dive into the skill itself, I'm a big believer that you teach people how to treat you. And a lot of people will come to me and say, well, nobody calls on me in meetings. Like they don't care about my opinion. They don't ask, which I find really curious because then I will ask, well, do you raise your hand? Do you tell them that you have something that you want to share? Do you sit silently in meetings and wait to be called on? And they'll go, oh,
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so you've taught them how to treat you. You've taught them that you don't want to communicate. You've taught them that you want to stay silent. And I want to be very clear here. There's nothing wrong per se with silence, so long as it's intentional and doesn't come with resentment. Because what I now work in is a line of work that is trying to cure the antidote of feeling resentful when you don't speak. And what I want to do is equip as many people as possible with the tools of how to speak in the moments when they need to or they want to. Because then you don't leave with that feeling of, oh, why didn't I say the thing? Oh, I should have spoken up. Oh, I should have said. And that ruminates. So what you've spoken to is thought-to-speech fluency. This is articulation of thought. There are so many ways you can build this skill set, so many. One of the simplest ones is impromptu speaking, which I love. And this is a skill set where you simply talk on the spot. Give yourself the opportunity to build this skill set outside of the moments when you need it. So for example, a lot of people will go, oh, I should speak up in that meeting. Okay, all right, next meeting I'll speak up. But they won't practice and they won't give themselves an opportunity to build the muscle. And so when the moment comes and it's 3:47 and they're sitting in their Wednesday afternoon meeting and their boss goes, are there any questions? their body sets on fire because they know they've made an internal promise that this is the day, this is the meeting when I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to speak up, I'm going to say something. But because they haven't given themselves the opportunity to build trust in their voice or to build evidence, they stay on mute and they don't speak. So what we want to do is build the evidence. So it's very simple. You all have a phone, a mobile device, which has camera in it. And when you open up your camera, there's a video function. I cannot overstate how extraordinary this skill is when you commit to it, to building articulation of thought, because you are learning to speak and think at the same time. So you have to be cognizant and fluent in your thought process whilst also structuring how you articulate it and express it and convey it to people. That is a skill, and that is mastery. Because if you can think something and yet say it at the same time as you're thinking it, you're doing pretty well. So first thing I would say is get out the phone, and then for 60 or 90 seconds a day, speak on anything. It could be even, in fact, just recently I demonstrated using a random word generator on my Instagram page. So you could get a random word generator, bop, bop, beep, bop, bop. My word is ice cream. Okay, I will speak on the word ice cream and talking randomly. In fact, this has now become a bit of a movement. I've seen a lot of people use this skill and build, actually quite a following online from doing this. And people are noticing their improvement in their ability to articulate their thoughts. So it works. It really does work. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is to structure your thoughts as you speak. Because what often happens is we don't think about structuring what we want to say. And so it all kind of comes out as spaghetti soup. And it's all blah, 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 blah. So there's one thing we get to hear, and then another thing we get to hear, and then we get to make it, and then we end with,
Oh, Lord.
does that make sense? And we completely diminish our credibility because we second guess ourselves and we hesitate in the whole thing. Really simply, when you start speaking, you set yourself up with structure by sharing one thing. The one thing I'd love to say to that is, the one idea I'd love to share, the one perspective we can consider is one. And what you're doing by structuring with one is you're giving yourself an opportunity to streamline all of your thoughts into one train of thought. And that way, then if you add the pause and you allow yourself to take your time, you actually sound quite competent as you speak. You've got one train of thought and you're slowing down as you're doing it. So if you combine those two skills, you're practicing every day with your phone and you're using structure as a first thing when you start to speak, you're automatically, very quickly going to start improving how you articulate your thoughts.
Yeah. I love the saying one thing.
Yeah.
I'm always in awe of people like who speak up in a meeting and say, oh, it's actually three things. So one, and I'm like, how do you manage?
How do you remember that?
The three things that you want to say? And like, I often ask myself, like, do you know what the third thing is before you start speaking, or do you come up with it in the moment? Like, what's the third thing? So I'm like, obviously, there's a little bit of prep that goes into it and knowing your stuff and what you're going to be talking about. But framing it is like, here's one thing I want to add, or one thing I'd love us to consider, or there's one question that I have. It frames it, and it almost cues, oh, I've got something to share that's going to build on this. And it adds value to the conversation. I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very valuable skill. So definitely one worth practicing and really committing to.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. A lot of this is kind of boring work. Just like getting good at any skill, going to the gym, building muscle. You got to get into the gym a lot and lift the weights in order to start seeing the muscle. So there's no quick, immediate pill or quick fix for this. But the long-term effects are huge. They are huge. And I mean, I could rattle off 10, 15, 20 off the top of my head, people who have gotten promotions, who have received incredible opportunities to speak on stage, who have transformed relationships with people purely because they have invested in learning the skill of how to speak well. So the payoff is massive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I do want to acknowledge how daunting it is to speak into your phone. Like, even if you're just by yourself, like I will sometimes like, I have an Aura ring, and when I do solo episodes and I'm literally in this room by myself, there's nobody here with me, I'm stressed. Like I have stress spikes just from speaking into a camera and just kind of like being with myself and that reflection of me, and just kind of like beating myself up for how bad I'm doing at times. So it can be really, really daunting to do something like this. And obviously to build the skill, you never have to publish this anywhere or, get it out into the world. But what I love about what you're saying is how much effort and how much of that, time in the gym, how much of that building the muscle it takes to become a good communicator and to become somebody who speaks up in a meeting. It's not just putting our minds to it. It's not just this Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to speak up in that meeting.
Yeah.
It's a lot of prep that goes into it. And I do love that about it is because I do feel like even if we're quiet and introspective, that is always something that we can commit to, right? Like the work in the dark, we romanticize the work that we do in the dark by ourselves. So I feel like that is something that we can easily commit to and get better at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how you acknowledge that it's daunting. Of course it's daunting. It is daunting. But the reality is nobody cares as much as you do. Nobody, I can tell you this for free. Nobody looks at my social media as much as I do. Nobody consumes my content more than me. I mean, you might be a close second, Hannah. You might be a close second. But it's phenomenal. Like we have this, and I call myself out, I'm including myself in this bracket too, because I think it's all of us. We have this really warped perception of attention. And we believe that everybody is so eyes on us and so hypercritical all the time of what we're doing and when we're doing it. But at the end of the day, nobody really bloody cares. And in fact, I remember a friend of mine who's a psychologist taught me this term, and it's called the spotlight effect. I don't know if you've heard of this before, Hannah. Yeah. And it's this idea that we all walk around with this spotlight on us going, God, does my hair look okay? And like you say, you pick up the phone camera. Oh God, like, does this look bad? Oh God, I'm doing this and doing that. At the end of the bloody day, if you post the video, nobody cares. Nobody even noticed. And I think that was a very liberating experience in my personal journey when my content style changed and I stopped caring as much. And I stopped putting on the outfits and I stopped feeling the pressure to wear makeup and I stopped scripting my videos. I just hit bloody record when I had something I wanted to say. And then I posted it without a second thought. And I think building that muscle has been transformative for me because it's built an astronomical trust in my voice and in my autonomy and my thought leadership that no amount of AI or anything could ever take away or ever replace.
Yeah. And I reckon they outperformed all the other content that you did before.
Like, probably.
That's what happens to me. I'm like, I feel like when you've got something that you feel strongly about, and when you feel like, oh, this is an interesting thought, I'm going to share that or I'm going to record that quickly with no intention of ever publishing it. I'm like, I'm not even going to publish this or hit post on this on Instagram. But then it always ends up so good that I'm like, oh, this is actually good. I'm going to post this. And then it outperforms the stuff that you put a lot of thought and scripting into. Yeah.
This is a rule that I have now learned for myself. The more I overthink, the less it lands.
Yeah.
And if I overthink something a lot, it doesn't land. And I don't know if it's an energy thing where people can feel that it's forced or if it's contrived. I don't know. But I completely agree with you. When something is off the top of the dome, as they say, and straight from the head, and you think it, you feel it, you post it, that's authentic communication one-on-one. You can't beat that.
Annelise, I want to pivot us a little bit into tools and ways to speak up. And where I want to start is with a little game of common speaking advice. And I want to hear from you as, the expert, obviously, whether you agree with that advice or not. And you're either going to say mute it or dial it up. So is it advice that we need to mute and forget about, or should we dial it up? I've got a couple of these for you. The first one is, as it relates to public speaking, fake it till you make it.
So I'm 50-50 on this, but I'm going to go mute it.
Why are you 50-50?
I'm 50-50 because for a lot of people, they resonate with fake it till you make it because they feel that it's an embodiment of something that they're not until they can feel like they are. Whereas a very core mantra and belief of mine is embodying where you are and allowing that to be all you need to get to where you want to go, because then you don't create this separate identity from yourself. But I know it resonates with a lot of people, but I'm going to say mute it, because I think that the more you try and fake, the less you're going to be real and the less you're going to be you.
Yeah. I mean, I love that for my audience, because it's essentially saying like, you do not need to become somebody else to speak. You can meet yourself where you are right now and speak, because you've got a voice already inside yourself. So I'll take it.
Perfect. God, if that's the first one, I'm sweating now.
You won. The next one is saying a lot of and like.
Mute it. Completely scratch it. Get rid of it. There's nothing more that diminishes your authority or your credibility than littering your speech with filler words. Because, like for the rest of the conversation, I could, maybe choose to put more filler words in what I say. But, I don't know, maybe that lands, maybe it doesn't. But it just, I don't know, I feel like it really diminishes credibility. Does that make sense?
You're doing so well.
I can't. It is arguably one of the greatest authority killers in communication, is littering your speech with fillers. Now, I'm not mad at a few. I'm not the filler police. I'm not going to slap you on the wrist if you use a few. Sometimes they're necessary for fluency. That's okay. But if you overuse them and they're really pervasive, we want to work on that.
What I started to do was actually, whenever I use the word just in written communication, I just scratch it. And I feel like it's the easiest way to start, because sometimes when we speak, we don't even recognize all the filler words that we use. So I feel like that's, advanced expert level to just scratch them. But whenever I see the word just in written communication, whether it's just a Slack message or an email, I scratch it. And I'm like, oh, it's actually not needed there.
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah.
And I agree.
Yeah.
Dial that up. Dial that up.
Okay. The next one, speak up more.
Dial it up.
Easy one. Take up more space.
Dial it up.
I want to pause on this one, because I know that one is one where, personally for myself and also for my audience, it's a tough one, because it feels like, do I want to take up more space? What's going to happen if I want to stay in my space? So what's going to happen? How do you think about taking up space?
I want to speak to this, if I may, because you've mentioned your audience, this is going to really be harder for them. I just want to speak directly to this. I believe it is the greatest disservice to deprive people of a gift that only you can give. And when you choose to not speak up, when you choose to not take up space, when you choose to not use your voice, you are actively depriving people of that gift, of that unique opinion, perspective, experience, energy, presence that only you have. And I believe a lot of people perceive taking up space as this big, loud, extroverted green giant that stomps around and slobbers over the peasants looking below. And it's this really big, scary thing. Actually, taking up space gets to be quiet. It gets to be presence. It gets to be controlled. It gets to be a real quiet confidence. You do not have to be the loudest in the room, but you have to feel like you are worthy of being in that room. And taking up space is simply how you carry yourself. And you look at the body language of someone who doesn't believe they deserve to be there versus somebody that does. And you can see in that distinction, without even using words, what taking up space is. So that would be my challenge to people who feel like, I can't take up space or it's not for me. Well, that's a very selfish opinion for you to have, because there's a lot of people out there who would really love for you to be a part of the conversation. But unfortunately, because of your discomfort, you're depriving them of that. And some people will call that tough love, and that's okay. I'm not in the business of pleasing everybody. But I do believe that everybody has something valuable to say. Everybody has value to share. And that's up to you to share it.
Well, we all need a little tough love. And I love how you brought that across. It's like, it's doing a disservice to the people in the room who could benefit from what you have to say. And it's not an ego show. It's about what you have to say and what you can contribute. It builds the perfect bridge to the last one. You already touched on it. It was like, be a little louder. And I think you already said that you do not need to be the loudest in the room in order to have presence.
No, you don't need to be the loudest, but you do need to project. There's a difference between the two. So being the loudest is, speaking for the sake of speaking and walking around like a peacock. Everyone needs to know who you are, what your name is. It's just a very icky energy. People can pick it up from a mile away. But projection is the tangible skill of using your diaphragm to project your voice. So this is actually being able to use your breath to support your voice when you speak. Now, it's not shouting, so it's not about volume, but it's about speaking from a supported place. So when you speak, your voice really lands. Because what often happens is when people don't speak using their diaphragm, the breath can come out really airy, and then it affects the quality of how our voice sounds. And that's where it can become quite light and floaty when we speak. But when you support your voice with your breath, this is where it feels richer, more resonant. So I would challenge, no, it's not about being loud, but I would always encourage people to learn how to activate their diaphragm and how to project, because that has a very tangible impact on how your voice is perceived.
Talk more about that. How do you do that? Because there is a noticeable difference between the two. And I also love that you put it in this frame of like, it's not louder, but there is a way to speak that makes it more impactful.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of different skills here. So for somebody who is not a singer or a swimmer, they may not have activated their diaphragm before, nor might they even know what it is. Your diaphragm is a muscle that sits below your lungs, underneath your rib cage, and it's a muscle that helps you control your breathing diaphragmatically. So if we're breathing what's called clavicularly, I'm becoming nerdy now. You've asked the question. So
I do some Pilates, so I might know.
There we go. Oh, she knows the Pilates breath. She knows the corset is on. She's got it. So when we breathe clavicularly, this is all through our chest and our shoulders. So it's very tight. And even actually, if I can get this on the mic. So if I breathe clavicularly, can you hear how strained and tight that is? Oh, even here it's giving me a vocal crack already. So if I try and speak from this place, so already when I talk, I'm getting a lot more vocal fry and a lot more crackle in my voice. It's a lot less controlled. So everything's coming from up here. Okay. So now I want to activate the diaphragm, which is if you place your hand just below your breastbone, it's above your belly button. This is where your diaphragm sits. When you breathe, you want to breathe out and in, not up and down, meaning your stomach wants to go out, expand as you breathe in, relax, go in as you breathe out, and you want to keep your shoulders down so the shoulders don't go up and down. It is a skill. It takes time. It's like learning a new dance routine. This is a muscle that you're building. So when I start to engage my diaphragm, this is where the richness comes. So the voice is supported. It feels stronger. It's more resonant. And when I mean resonance, this is the buzzing that happens in all of the hollow cavities in our nose, in our jaw, in our neck, in our crown. So when you breathe diaphragmatically and you have enough breath support, you are coming from a really supported space, which also means you can slow down because you're not rushing to get to the end of a sentence to take another breath. So you can actually speak slower and more controlled, and you have a richer, more resonant tone. So that is what I mean by projection, and is something that you can practice at home.
Yeah. I mean, it also calms your nervous system, doesn't it? For anyone who feels nervous when they are, when they speak up in a meeting or go on stage. I feel that a lot of like shortness of breath, like.
Yeah.
So it's like,
hey, want to normalize it? So do I. I spoke about this on the tour. I have lived with anxiety my whole life. I'm still backstage with my hands shaking. It's I don't think it's something I will ever be able to overcome. It's the greatest irony that I'm a professional speaker and yet I have massive anxiety. But it is entirely possible to build a relationship with your nerves where you can learn how to control them. For me personally, it's never something that truly goes away. They're always there slightly, but I have learned over time how to build that relationship so that my body feels safe and my body gets to feel calm versus fight or flight.
Do you have like habits or like a routine that you do before you go on stage or before you do speak in public or before you go on and speak to, lots and lots of people? Is there anything that we can steal from you?
Yeah. Listen, I am a creature of habit. I'm a creature of routine. I have quite a strenuous routine. I'll be honest. It's there's a lot, so I won't get into everything, but I'll share a few of them. It actually doesn't even start the morning of for me. It's usually about 48 hours beforehand. So as a personal preference, I don't have dairy. But for voice, the reason I believe everybody should avoid dairy if you're speaking for long periods of time is dairy creates phlegm in your throat, which you need to clear.
Dairy? I didn't know.
Yeah. So if you have a coffee with milk, or if you have eggs with butter, or if you have yogurt in the morning, you're creating more likelihood for a film to create in your throat, which creates phlegm, reduces the quality of sound with the voice. So take that or leave that, but I avoid having dairy. I also don't have caffeine. So no caffeine because there's two reasons. Everyone always shakes their head when I say it. Number one, caffeine is a dehydrator. So it will strip all the natural moisture of your throat. And we want to hydrate the throat as much as possible when we speak. But number two, if you're already prone to being anxious, why have something that's going to automatically quicken your heart rate and make you even more anxious?
I'm such a coffee first millennial. Do not do
I know. And I know people, they will throw tomatoes at me and they'll boo me on stage. That's fine. But this is what I know has worked for many, many people I work with. And it is, take it or leave it. Decide what works best for you. It's your body, it's your voice. But those are two consumption things for me that are non-negotiable. I would do a vocal steam the night before and the morning of. So if you have an actual steamer, so like what are they called?
Like an inhaler? Like when you're
an
sick,
inhaler.
Like that type of thing?
A nebulizer, that's it. So I have a nebulizer, which is like an inhaler. You have a mask or you put it straight into your mouth and it brings steam. You don't need to make the investment. You could literally, and I do this all the time, get a bowl, put hot water in the bowl, put a towel over your head, breathe in through your mouth so it hits your vocal cords, breathe out through your nose. So that's a really, really simple technique, 3 to 5 minutes, Bob's your uncle. You also get a nice little facial steam as part of it. So
I was just gonna
your skin gets to glow as well.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. Exactly. Non-negotiable for me the morning of is I will have some kind of protein. So usually eggs is my go-to because it's low in sugar, which means I'm not going to get a spike during the day and my energy is not going to crash. But also I have very high adrenaline the morning of a gig. I'm very excited. And so because of that, I'm not hungry. So it's very hard for me to sit and eat a full meal. And I've learned over the years that 2 boiled eggs is the absolute sweet spot. It will last me for a few hours and does me good until lunchtime. So that's my go-to. Another non-negotiable for me is mirror talk. So without a doubt, before every single gig, when I'm fully clothed, fully ready to go, makeup on, feeling amazing, I will stand in front of the mirror and I will have about 2 minutes with myself and I will just hype myself up for the day. So I will tell myself anything I need to hear that morning if I'm feeling particularly nervous. One of the shows for the tour, in fact, I woke up with my period. I had horrible cramping and I was feeling really, really emotional. I'm already emotional enough as it is. When I'm on my period, it's just a million times worse. So I woke up and it's, one of the tour stops and it's really massive, like 14-hour day incoming. And so in the morning, I need to hear like, you're doing so well. I'm so proud of you. It's okay. You'll get through it. And so I'm just telling myself everything I need to hear in the mirror and, reinforcing what I know to be true. And that is one of the things that gets me in the best frame of mind. There's so many other things I do. There's so many, Hannah. Like I couldn't possibly go through all of them now. One of the other big ones I'll say is I don't review my content. Because the more you review your content closer to the time that you do something, the more you convince your brain that you're not prepared. So if you take that 48-hour time cutoff. I say it to all my clients, 72 hours, 48 hours before a gig, stop looking at your script, stop looking at your slides, stop looking at your content. Because at that point, there's nothing more you could learn or absorb. And you have to really lean into trust. Trust that you know your stuff, trust that you've got it, let the rest do its thing.
That's what my math teacher used to tell me. It's like,
yeah,
do not study
well,
the night before. It's like, put those things away, go to bed, do something else, do not think about it anymore, and you're going to be fine the next day. I mean, love that.
I dropped math, so I'm sure there was something that they were right about. I should have listened to them.
You just talked about the pep talk in the mirror. And I mean, I could go on and on with you, Annelise. I feel like I want to, have your full routine. And I know you spoke about that. So there's content online about what you do before you speak. But for the person listening, the next time they're in that meeting where they told themselves to speak up and go off mute and they feel hesitant, what is this thing you want them to tell themselves? What's the pep talk? What's the mirror talk? What's the thing that you would like them to take away from this and remind themselves of the next time they're in the situation where they're hesitant to go off mute?
What a beautiful question to end on. There are 3 words I've become known for, and those 3 words are use your voice. And no matter how much advice I give, those 3 words are the greatest feedback that I receive from people of what sticks with them in the moment where they really need to speak. And it's a very small reminder. Use my voice. Use my voice. One of the things that I personally use as a mantra that, in my life, I've done a lot of hard things. I'm a big believer in doing hard things. It's a whole nother conversation. But one of my favorite mantras is I can and I will. I can and I will. And in moments where, even today, I had to have a really difficult conversation today, and going into the Zoom meeting, I'm nervous about doing it. And I remind myself as the Zoom meeting is loading, I can and I will. I can and I will. I can and I will. And it's a nice little reminder that you can do this. And you know what? You will do it. You're about to do it. You're going to do it. So if you're sitting in the meeting and your hand isn't even up yet and you're thinking, oh, do I, don't I can and I will. I can and I will. And you know what you do? You put your hand up before you even get to think about it. Because if you think too hard about it, that hand's never going to go up. So you put the hand up and you go, well, it's up now. Shit. Okay. I can and I will. I can and I will. I can and I will. Use my voice.
5,
use my
4,
voice.
3, 2, 1. Go.
5, 4, 3. That's it. Yeah. Just as Mel says. Exactly. So yeah, I think that for me is a mantra I've used over many years, and it's served me pretty well.
What a beautiful sentiment to stop with. Annelise, thank you so much for joining me, to join this audience, to share your journey, but also your wisdom. It feels like it gives me so much energy to be in presence of somebody else who, does all of these things, who can and who will. And I always feel like I'm absorbing this, and it also truly gives me so much. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And please let my audience know where they can find you, follow you, stalk you, as I do, and connect with you if they want to learn more about speaking.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hannah. And I want to say genuinely, this has been one of my most enjoyable interview experiences. You have such a way with words and you're so beautifully eloquent. And I can tell that you really care and you're incredibly genuine in the way that you have received what I've shared, but also in the way that you have paraphrased and digested it for other people to understand. So that to me demonstrates a tremendous amount of intention. So thank you so much for bringing that. It's a real pleasure to receive on my end as an interviewee. So thank you. If you want to stalk me, just like Hannah did, one of the things I'm going to invite with the stalking, because I'm a big believer, as we mentioned in this conversation, it's very easy to look at somebody and go, wow, that must be so easy for them. They've got all this stuff. If you've got time on your hands and you've got like 2 or 3 minutes, you can find me at the Annelise McCarthy. So Annelise spelled with an E, Annelise, the Annelise McCarthy. If you've got time, go on the page, but scroll and keep scrolling. And in about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, you'll find my very first posts, particularly on Instagram. I've never deleted a post. And I think it's a really useful exercise so that you feel more connected to me as a person and to my journey. And you're not just looking at the highlight reel of what I've now created. I like to believe the content I create is authentic and genuine, but it is hard to resonate with somebody who is so much further along in their journey. And so, I resonate with the woman who started posting in 2020 And I just had my eyebrows hennaed and they're incredibly dark in the videos and it looks awful. And I dislocated my shoulder and my arm's in a sling. And there's every version of me in those posts. And I'm awkward. My very first Instagram live is still there. You can go and watch it if you want to put yourself through that pain. You can see everything. And I'm so incredibly grateful to past Annelise for not deleting it. And I think it's a really beautiful permission slip for people who want to see the journey of becoming, knowing you can start at any point, at any time, and knowing what's possible if you just keep going. So please stalk me, but also if you'd like to do your due diligence and feel a little bit more connected to the reality of the journey, stalk a little more intentionally and go a little bit deeper and see what you can find.
What an original thing to say. I love that. And do not scroll on my page. Go scroll on Annelise. I'll link it in the
I know what I'm doing after this episode.
But honestly, like sometimes I do that when I see somebody at their best. I'm like, where's your first video? Where's the first? And you always find that with the really good ones. And it's a really good reminder. It's something everybody can do right away. Love that. Annelise, thank you so much for joining me today. I'd love to do this again.
Yeah, I'd be honored, Hannah. Just say the word. Thank you so much for having me, truly.